He was loyal to his country, though CIA counted him as the best agent. But arrogant director made a blunder and killed his wife mercilessly. Directors ignored the risk, thinking what a single agent can do against them. But on that particular day, he proved to them he was actually one-man army. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The story kicks off with Dr. Martin Harris and his wife, Liz, on a flight to Berlin where they're headed for a big conference. After touching down, they quickly grab a taxi, but in the rush, Martin forgets his briefcase on an airport trolley. Their plans for the weekend: attending an intriguing exhibition on Saturday and grabbing lunch with Professor Bressler. As they pull up to their hotel, Martin realizes his briefcase is missing. Meanwhile, Liz is dealing with the disappointing news that their room might not be available. Martin, determined to retrieve his briefcase, jumps back into the taxi, but his phone has no service, leaving him stranded in Berlin's bustling streets. He suggests a new route to the taxi driver, but fate has other plans. A horrific crash sends their taxi flying off a bridge. Martin loses consciousness as his brave taxi driver fights to pull him from the wreckage. As sirens wail and paramedics arrive, the driver vanishes without a trace. Martin is barely hanging on, but gets rushed to the hospital, where he wakes up from a 4-day coma, alone and confused. The staff informs him that he had no ID on him, and to make matters worse, no one has come looking for him, not even his wife. A nurse hands him his personal belongings, including a watch from Liz, a book with a heartfelt message from his father, and a string of mysterious numbers. A news report about the conference jolts his memory, reminding him why he's in Berlin. Though hesitant, the doctor discharges Martin, providing contact information in case anything goes wrong post-accident. Now out of the hospital, Martin heads back to the hotel, hoping to reclaim his lost room key. He spots Liz and naturally follows her, but hotel security stops him since he doesn't have any ID. Things take a shocking turn when Liz pretends not to recognize him and introduces another man as the real Dr. Martin Harris. Shaken and confused, Martin is shown footage of Liz checking into the hotel earlier, followed by the other Martin arriving at 3 p.m. Desperate, Martin tries to contact his embassy, but it's Thanksgiving and they're closed. He requests to be taken back to the hospital, but jumps out of the taxi midway, only to see Liz dining with the other Martin at a restaurant. Martin, unable to check into a budget hotel due to his lack of a passport, steps outside and calls his friend Rodney, admitting that he's in serious trouble. After hanging up, he realizes a car is following him, so he ducks into the subway, where a wild chase ensues. He manages to lose his pursuers by hopping onto a train, where he tries to piece together his appointments, scribbling them down as best as he can. Upon exiting the train, Martin rips a page out of a phone book and spots a taxi similar to the one in his accident, prompting him to track down the taxi company. Martin goes to the taxi office and finds out that his driver, Gina, was fired after causing her boss to lose 20,000 euros. With some help from another employee, Biko, Martin tracks Gina down to a bar where she's now working. However, Gina wants nothing to do with him and tells him to leave her alone. Martin goes to his appointment with Professor Bressler, only to discover that another Martin is already there. Both of them claim to be the real Martin, but the other Martin proves his identity with an ID and a photo with Liz, causing Martin to faint. When Martin wakes up in the hospital, a sympathetic nurse gives him the contact information for a detective friend of hers. The doctor expresses regret for discharging him so early, but Martin fires back, questioning how he could possibly know so much about Martin Harris if he's not really him. Just then, things take a dark turn as the man who had been tailing him in the subway shows up to kidnap him. The nurse tries to intervene but tragically loses her life in the process. With the attacker momentarily distracted, Martin breaks free and makes a daring escape in an ambulance. Once he's in the clear, he tries calling Liz, but it's the other Martin who picks up, leaving Martin even more confused. With nowhere else to turn, Martin seeks out Jurgen, the investigator recommended by the nurse. He lays out his case, showing Jurgen the mysterious book of numbers and his memory of his planned schedule as proof of his identity. Martin believes this whole situation was a long con, but thinks there's some detail that's been overlooked. Jurgen agrees to help and Martin hands over all his cash for the services. Jurgen advises Martin to reconnect with the taxi driver, Gina, as she might hold more clues to unraveling the mystery. Martin tracks down Gina and confronts her, acknowledging that she disappeared after the accident because of her illegal status. He offers her his watch as a sign of trust and asks her to communicate with Jurgen. Meanwhile, Jurgen is busy pulling strings, calling in a favor with Hans at the airport for some assistance. Martin, still reeling from his ordeal, tells Gina everything that's happened, and she offers him a place to stay for the night. Jurgen uncovers a shocking video of an assassination attempt on an Arab prince named Shada while digging into the conference attendee list. Meanwhile, Martin discovers Gina's sketches, leading to an argument as she accuses him of invading her privacy. Gina confesses her struggles to save money for official papers, hoping to escape her current situation. Their argument is cut short by a knock at the door, delivering keys to Gina's taxi. But before they can relax, two armed men burst in, knocking Gina unconscious. Martin escapes to the roof, pursued by one of the attackers. As they fight on the rooftop, Martin gains the upper hand, but it's Gina who ultimately saves the day by jabbing the attacker with a syringe. They barely escape in the taxi, narrowly avoiding a collision with the second armed man, ending in a dramatic standoff near an oncoming tram and a hurried escape into a nearby club. Inside, a bitter Gina opens up about her past, revealing that her family was killed by men like these, fueling her frustration at being dragged into Martin's nightmare. She storms off, leaving Martin alone to wrestle with the cryptic numbers in his book. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in his head as he begins to decipher the code, realizing that the numbers reference specific words on certain pages. As Martin digs deeper into the code, Gina reappears, and Martin immediately apologizes for dragging her into his mess, promising to make things right. He's managed to crack the code and shares it with Jurgen. It's the scientific names of two common flowers, though the meaning behind them is still unclear. Digging deeper into the connection between Prince Shada and Professor Bressler, it becomes apparent they're working together on a revolutionary project to tackle world hunger. The theory: someone's impersonating Martin to get close to the prince, possibly to carry out an assassination. With renewed determination, Martin decides to stick to his original plan and find Liz, despite Gina's protests. He tails Liz to the exhibition, keeping his eyes on her and the lurking danger. Gina tries to warn him about the arrival of the other Martin, but before long, Martin manages to steal a few precious moments with Liz. She finally admits she's caught in this deadly game, advising him to locate the briefcase. After a heart-to-heart, Martin leaves to head for the airport, with Gina by his side. Meanwhile, Jurgen receives a dossier from Hans, the airport security, featuring photos of Martin and Liz together. At the same time, Martin gets a call from his friend Rodney, who confirms that he can vouch for Martin's identity and promises to head over immediately. However, Rodney's arrival rings alarm bells for Jurgen, who realizes Rodney's an ex-mercenary. But before Rodney can do anything, Jurgen is poisoned and dies. Meanwhile, Martin retrieves his long-lost briefcase from the airport. A quick look inside reveals his passport and other crucial documents. Gina warns him that staying there is risky, but Martin is adamant about following Liz's advice to wait. As Gina prepares to leave, he hands her some cash as a token of thanks. She returns his watch, worried that Liz might have tipped off their location before she leaves. Suddenly, Rodney storms in, claiming he's there to help. As Gina waits for a taxi, she spots Martin being suddenly abducted. Without hesitation, she hijacks a taxi and gives chase. Rodney roughly drags Martin out of the van and starts explaining the bizarre situation. He tells Martin that the identity he's clinging to, Martin Harris, never really existed. It's all a fake persona designed to infiltrate the conference. All of Martin's memories, completely fabricated. As Rodney presses a gun to Martin, demanding to know who he really is, he reveals that he was trained as an assassin, just as things are about to go south. Gina crashes into the van with the taxi, taking out both Rodney and the villain. In the aftermath, Martin rifles through Rodney's suitcase, finding a stash of fake passports for himself and Liz. A closer look reveals that Rodney had been in Berlin 3 months earlier. Martin shares with Gina his grim realization: the prince is the target and will be attacked that evening. Regretting that she didn't just let him drown, Gina stays by his side. As night falls, Prince Shada, escorted by Professor Bressler and his young daughters, arrives at the conference. Liz warmly welcomes the royal guests to the event. Meanwhile, Martin and Gina sneak into the building through a service entrance, but their presence doesn't go unnoticed by hotel security. Inside, Professor Bressler hands his laptop to Liz for safekeeping, giving her the opportunity to secretly plant a device and start downloading the hard drive. But something catches her eye: a code from Martin's father's book. Security finally catches up with Martin and Gina, and Martin quickly spins a story, claiming he planted a bomb in the room 3 months ago. As soon as the download finishes, Liz activates the supposed bomb. Anxiety gnaws at Bressler, prompting him to retrieve his laptop. Liz smoothly hands it over and promptly leaves the party with the other Martin. As hotel security reviews the 3-month-old footage, they identify identify Martin and Liz and trigger a building evacuation. On her way out, Liz decides to go back and deal with a fake bomb, wanting to erase any connection between herself and the device. Meanwhile, Martin spots Bressler's daughters and has a sudden realization. Their names match the plant codes he used earlier. He figures out that Bressler's research, if mishandled, could be worth billions, and that Bressler, not the prince, is the real target. Breaking free from security, Martin engages in an intense showdown with the other Martin, who's back to assassinate Bressler. Liz tries to defuse the bomb but fails, getting caught in the blast. The explosion triggers a flood of memories in Martin, revealing his involvement in the plot. Just as Gina arrives, Martin kills the other Martin with a shard of broken mirror. Gently, Gina takes the weapon from him and guides him out of the burning building. In the aftermath, firefighters work to control the flames as Bressler leaves with his daughters. The next day, Bressler makes an optimistic announcement about developing a new strain of corn that could significantly reduce world hunger. With a fake passport provided by Martin, Gina now has the chance to start a new life. Martin, also taking on a new identity, joins her, and together they board a train, ready to embark on a fresh journey.